Did you know that YouTube will now age restrict any video that has swear words within its first 30 seconds? That is some goddamn motherfucking bullshit. And did you know that EA and Codemasters released a VR version of their fairly popular racing game Grid Legends on the Quest 2 in January? Reception was, let's say, mixed on that one. While it has tons of content and is probably the best racing game on the platform in terms of driving mechanics and physics, it is very limited when it comes to actual VR mechanics, and the way they scaled down the graphics to get it to run on the platform makes it not pretty to look at. Upload VR put it like this: Grid Legends is a good racing game but a bad VR game, and ultimately it'll come down to what you are looking for. Do you want a racing sim that properly utilizes VR's unique capabilities, or do you want a portable VR racing game regardless of the compromises involved? If the latter is the case, you might be satisfied with what the game has to offer. On January 19th, Colossal Cave, a VR reimagining of the text adventure with the same name, released on the Quest 2 to a rather poor reception. 6 Degrees of Freedom were particularly unimpressed and gave it a cave in 2.5 out of 10. Quote, flawed by any metric you can conceive of, Colossal Cave is a colossal bore. It's a point and click port of a text-based game that refuses to acknowledge the medium to which it's been ported. End quote. It's not a good VR game, but as they state in their only pro point, it might still be appealing to some for nostalgia reasons. On the same day, the dinosaur hunting game Primal Hunt released, also on the Quest 2. This one to a better reception. The VR Grid gave it a good 7, quote, with a campaign that will take somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 hours to beat, an ever-increasing challenge as well as a hefty skill tree that includes weapon and armor unlocks. There's a lot to get through here, and I'm having a fair bit of fun. As more delay information, the PC version of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Retribution got pushed back to March 21st. It now has the same release date as the PSVR2 version.
Half a league. Half a league. Half a league onward. All in the Valley of Death. Road the 600. Forward the Light Brigade. Charge for the guns, he said.
The Light Brigade is a VR roguelike shooter by Funktronic Labs. The world is plunged into eternal darkness. Only the Light Brigade stands as humanity's last line of defense against the Obsidian forces. As a soldier of the brigade, it is your mission to venture out into the darkness to free the souls of the fallen. To aid you in this endeavor, you will have access to a range of World War era inspired weapons, from bolt action rifles over pistols to machine guns, with realistic physics-based gunplay and reload mechanics. Additionally, you have access to powerful light magic abilities to round off your combat suite. In typical roguelite fashion, you start your run with a standard issue rifle that you can modify by looting powerful upgrades until your inevitable demise. Between runs, you rise in the ranks of the brigade and use rank points to upgrade your weapons, passive abilities and spells, as well as unlock new weapons, characters, loadouts and playstyles. The Light Brigade will make its way to the public on February 22nd for PCVR on Steam, the Quest 2 and the PSVR2.
Into the Valley of Death. Road the 600.
Gran Turismo 7 was PlayStation's big racing game offering of last year that landed to a very strong critical reception, and now it gets a VR mode. This is not the first VR port of the GT series. Back in 2017, Gran Turismo Sport had a PSVR1 version, but that was very limited. You could only race against one AI opponent, no campaign, no multiplayer. Fortunately, this time around it's quite different. The entire game can be played in VR. It is unclear as of now if it will have any forms of motion controls though. The game will be available for the PSVR2 launch on the 22nd, and it will be a free update for everyone who owns the flat game on the PS5. You'll love to see it.
Now, let's take a look at him. Wow. Well, Ethan Winters. You escaped my little brother's idiot games, did you? Let's see how special you are. Yes, mother.
Well, it's Resident Evil Village and it's in VR. Do I have to say more? Maybe a little bit more. This is the 8th major installment of the legendary survival horror franchise, which lets you again take up the role of Ethan Winters. Ever since Capcom brought the series to first person with Resident Evil 7, VR is a part of the formula. While the PSVR1 version of RE7 was still a bit compromised, no motion controls for example, you shoot where you look, this time around the VR version will be quite a bit more involved. Resident Evil Village will support the new PSVR2 Sense controllers, it will have full motion controls, they added some interactivity to the environment and mixed up some combat mechanics. For example, you can now dual wield and you can block by holding up your arms in front of your head and things of that nature. Resident Evil Village VR will also be available for the PSVR2 launch on the 22nd. This will not be a standalone title, but again a free update for anyone who owns a flat game on the PS5. By the way, there's a VR mod for the PC version of Resident Evil Village in case PCVR is your platform of choice and you also want some Dimitrescu action.
Redemption is still possible, Reyes. Climb the mountain. Find out why the machines are attacking. Do that, and you shall be a free man. Now, it is time to climb into the light.
This is Sony's flagship title for the PSVR2, Horizon Call of the Mountain. This Horizon spin-off title is the first game in the series that does not feature Aloy as the protagonist. Instead you will play as Reyes, a former warrior of the Shadow Karja, who is seeking to redeem himself by investigating a threat to the Sundom. Though this will be a full action-adventure game, there are some compromises to be expected. There won't be an open world, the game takes a much more linear approach than the previous titles, but there will be some branching paths and some areas to explore. Combat will take place in preordained arenas and you won't have free movement, you will be locked in a circle around each enemy and can only dodge to left and right. And be aware that this is a full price game that will be about 6 hours long. All that aside, the game is absolutely gorgeous to look at and surely marks a milestone and technical accomplishment for VR gaming. Guerrilla Games were supported by Firesprite in this endeavor, also a subsidiary of Sony, who were responsible for the PSVR1 titles Playroom and the Persistence. Call of the Mountains will be available for the PSVR2 launch on the 22nd.
You have walked in the shadows, Reyes. Now it is time to climb into the light.
The PSVR2 will launch with about 30 or so games, the vast majority of which are ports of older titles. I only included new games or kinda new games with a confirmed release date. Usually I mention it in this series when a bigger game gets ported to another platform, but this time it's just too much, there are too many of them. I might do a separate video with information about all the other games coming to the platform closer to launch date, but I'm not sure yet. There are already a ton of those videos out there and I don't know if I can add anything of value to that. Let me know if you would be interested. There will be some more cool original titles coming to the PSVR2 over the next couple of months. Subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date on future VR game releases. I'm currently moving into a new apartment, there I will have a shiny new studio, very excited to see how this will turn out. Have a nice day and see you in the next one. For me, from my new studio, and for you as always here on the channel.